Shaquille O'Neal stood on the sidewalk on Kensington Avenue. He stared at his black SUV sitting dead in the middle of the road. 9 o'clock at night. Philadelphia. Nobody around. He looked up and down the street. A laundromat, 20 steps away, still had its lights on. He ducked his head and walked in. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed yellow. For washing machines were running. The air smelled like detergent and warm steam. A woman sat in the left corner. Thick round glasses. A paperback open on her lap. She didn't look up when the door opened. Shaq sat down in the plastic chairs in the middle of the room. Then, for no reason he could explain, he looked over at her. And she raised her head, not because of a sound, not because anyone called her name, just the instinct of someone who had been waiting a long time for something, and who knew at the moment it arrived. She set her book down. I always knew you'd come back one day. What Shaq didn't know was this. There was someone else in that laundromat. And what happened that night was going to change everything. Kensington Avenue in 2026 is not the kind of street people choose when they have another option. 20 years ago, this block had the Petrov family grocery, Dolores's hair shop, and the Hartwell textile mill running 3 full shifts. The Petrov store closed in 2019. Dolores retired last year. The Hartwell mill is still there, but 3 shifts became 1. And that 1 shift runs from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. All women, because nobody else would take it. The Washmore laundromat still had its lights on. On Kensington, that's not something you could count on. Shaquille O'Neal knew streets like this one. He grew up on them. Newark in 1980 didn't look much different from Philadelphia in 2026. Yellow streetlights. The smell of somebody's dinner coming through an open window. Kids being called inside before it got dark. His mother, Lucille, worked the night shift at University Hospital. Her white uniform was washed by hand. So many times it had gone soft. His stepfather, Sergeant Philip Harrison, taught him that a man's worth isn't measured by what he has. It's measured by what he remembers. Shaq remembered everything. So when the SUV made a bad sound at 8:47 that night and died on Kensington Avenue, he didn't call for another car right away. He sat in the dark for a moment. He looked out through the window. Low brick buildings. Shops already closed. A few young guys standing outside a convenience store on the corner. And the Washmore laundromat. 20 steps ahead. Lights still on. He pushed the door open and stepped out. October air hit him, cold and damp, carrying the smell of wet asphalt from the afternoon rain. He pulled his hood up. A dark navy hoodie, no logo. The kind he wore when he didn't want to be anyone at all. He ducked through the laundromat door. 7 feet 1 inch is not something you can hide. But he had learned a long time ago how to make himself smaller. Shoulders slightly forward. Steps slow. Eyes down instead of straight ahead. The way a big man tells the world he isn't trying to take up every inch of space, even when his body wants to. Inside the Washmore, for machines were running. Their spinning made a low, steady sound, almost like breathing. The yellow light made everything look a little tired. The smell was detergent mixed with hot steam and old plastic from the chairs along the wall. Left corner, a woman. A green wool sweater, worn soft at the elbows. Black jeans. Thick round glasses. A paperback open on her lap, the spine cracked from being folded back many times. She didn't look up when the door opened. Right corner, a young woman. A gray Temple University hoodie. Dark jogger pants. Headphones around her neck. Eyes down on her phone. Tall. Even sitting down, you could see she had a few inches on the woman across the room. Shaq sat down in the middle row of plastic chairs. The chair made a quiet sound under his weight. He put his hands on his knees and stared at the machines like a man waiting for his laundry. His phone buzzed. His driver texted, "Tow truck is 45 minutes out." 45 minutes. He put the phone away, looked around. Nobody was paying attention to him. The woman was still reading. The girl was still on her phone. The Washmore at 9 on a Friday night was not a place where people looked around. Then his eyes stopped on the woman in the left corner. Not because she did anything. She was just reading. Head slightly down. Her thumb holding her page the way people do when they're used to reading in short windows of time and don't want to lose their spot. But something about the way she sat, back straight even in that hard plastic chair, shoulders slightly tense, like a person carrying something they couldn't put down, kept him from looking away. And she raised her head. Slow. No surprise in it. Like she had felt someone watching, and had already decided she would look up when she was ready. Their eyes met. 1 second. 2 seconds. She took off her glasses. She looked at him without them. And without them, she could still see him just fine. "I always knew you'd come back one day," she said. Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't shocked. There were no tears. It was just the sound of someone finally setting down something they had been holding for a very long time. Shaquille O'Neal, 7 feet 1 inch tall, 325 pounds, for NBA championships, a doctorate, for $100 million, could not find a single word for the first 3 seconds. Those 3 seconds were longer than any game he had ever played. Marlene Coates, 32 years. Newark, summer of 1992. Shaquille O'Neal was 20 years old. He had just finished 3 years at LSU. The Orlando Magic had just taken him first overall in the NBA draft. He went back to Newark for 1 month before the season started, not to celebrate, to say goodbye. He knew that, after September of that year, Newark would become a place he visited, not a place he lived. There are things only people from Newark understand about Newark. The smell of hot asphalt in July. The way car horns turn into their own kind of music at rush hour. The way women there stand, back straight, eyes forward, not asking anyone's permission to take up space. Marlene Coates was the daughter of a textile worker and an electrician. She was 13 the first time he saw her, not in any romantic way, just in the Newark way, where everybody knows everybody's face, because the neighborhood isn't big enough to hide. By 1992, she was 22, working part-time at a corner grocery, taking accounting classes at Essex County Community College. They met one afternoon in June in the parking lot of that grocery store. Shaq was trying to fold himself into a 1989 Honda Civic he had borrowed from a friend. It wasn't going well. Marlene watched him fight with the door for about 20 seconds. Then she said, "You need a truck." Not, "Oh my God, you're Shaq." Not, "Can I get an autograph?" Just, "You need a truck." He laughed. First real laugh he'd had in a week. June, July, August of 1992. Those 3 months, Shaq learned a different kind of fear. Not the fear of failing on the court. Something else. The fear that the real version of him, not the #1 pick, not the big kid from Newark who made it. The version that sat on Marlene's rooftop at 9 at night eating boiled peanuts and saying things he couldn't say to anyone else. That version might not be good enough for whatever was waiting for him in Orlando. Marlene listened. She never said he was overthinking it. She never said he'd be fine. She just listened. And sometimes she asked a question that kept him thinking for 3 more days. He couldn't find that anywhere else. September came. He had to leave. The night before he left, he sat in his rented room on Broad Street. Suitcase open, but not packed. And he wrote. He wrote to Marlene everything he couldn't say out loud, that those 3 months were the only time he had felt like himself, not a performance of himself. That he was afraid Orlando would turn him into someone different, someone who wouldn't deserve her. That he didn't have the right to ask her to wait, because he didn't know where he was going yet. He finished the letter, read it over, folded it, put it in an envelope, wrote her name on the front. Then he put it in the nightstand drawer. The next morning he got up early, grabbed his suitcase, closed the door behind him, and didn't go back. He told himself she would be better off without that letter. That a letter that would only create expectations he wasn't sure he could meet. That silence was sometimes the kindest thing. He told himself that for 32 years. He never fully believed it. "Do you remember me?" Marlene asked. It wasn't a real question. She already knew the answer. The way he had looked at her when she raised her head, not like a stranger, but like a man recognizing something that had once been his, didn't need any words. "Marlene," he said, just her name. But the way he said it, slow, careful, the way you hold something fragile, said more than any full sentence. She nodded. She put her glasses back on. She looked down at her book for 1 second, then folded it shut and put it in the canvas bag beside her. The move of someone who had decided this conversation mattered more than the page she was on. "What are you doing on Kensington?" she asked. Car broke down. She didn't smile, but something in the corner of her eyes went quiet. "Still," she said. Didn't explain more. He didn't ask, because he understood. She wasn't talking about the car. How long have you lived here? He asked. 32 years, she said. The exact number of years since he left Newark. She didn't underline it. She didn't need to. The number did the work itself. He looked around the laundromat. For machines spinning. Yellow light. Detergent smell. Nothing special about this room, but something in the air made him feel like he was sitting inside a conversation that had started a long time ago without him knowing. What do you do? He asked. Hartwell Mill. Night shift. No self-pity in her voice. Never had been. 10 at night to 6 in the morning. 11 years now. 11 years of night shifts. He thought of his mother. Lucille in her soft white uniform. Women from Newark don't complain about their work. They just show up. You doing okay? He asked. The dumbest question he could have asked. But nothing else fit right then. Marlene looked at him for a moment before she answered. The look of someone deciding what the true answer was versus what the easy answer was. I'm fine, she said. The life I have, I built it myself. Nobody handed it to me. He heard what she didn't say inside that. Nobody handed it to me, including you. He didn't lower his head, but something inside him dropped a little. Then he remembered the other person in the room. The girl in the right corner. She was still sitting there, with her headphones around her neck, eyes on her phone. But he noticed now, her fingers had stopped scrolling. At some point they had just stopped. You're not here alone, he said. Not a question. Marlene didn't answer right away. She looked over at the right corner. He followed her eyes. And for the first time, since he walked in, he really looked at the girl sitting there. Tall. You could tell even sitting down. A gray Temple University hoodie, sleeves pushed up to her elbows. Her hands rested on her thighs. Long fingers, big knuckles, the hands of someone who has large hands and has learned to keep them still. Shaq looked at her hands, then looked down at his own, then looked at hers again. Some things don't need explaining. Some things the body knows before the mind catches up, like the way he could still recognize the smell of Newark after 30 years away, not a memory exactly. Something written into the bone. He felt his breath catch. Marlene, he said. Lower this time. Careful. Marlene gave one small nod. Her name is Brianna. The girl in the right corner still had her eyes down, but her shoulders had stiffened slightly. The stiffness of someone trying very hard to look normal, while everything inside them is not normal at all. Brianna, Marlene said. The girl pulled her headphones off. Slowly, she set them on her leg. She looked up. Those eyes. Lucille used to say there are some eyes you can look right into and know exactly what the person is thinking. Brianna Coates's eyes didn't hide anything, not because she showed too much, but because she had the kind of gaze so direct that most people couldn't hold it for long. She stood up, 5'10", a full head taller than her mother. Under the yellow light of the washmore, Shaq looked at this 24-year-old and saw Newark in every inch of her. The way she stood, without apology, shoulders level, eyes that didn't ask for permission. 3 people stood in the laundromat, for machines still spinning, light still yellow. Outside the glass door, Kensington Avenue was moving through its Friday night like nothing was happening. Nobody spoke first. Brianna looked at Shaq, not angry, not glad. None of the emotions that would have been easy to name. Just the look of someone who had imagined this moment in many different ways over many years and was now finding out that none of those versions had prepared her for the real one. Shaq looked at her, then at Marlene. Marlene didn't say anything. She just opened her canvas bag and took out an envelope. Worn soft at the corners. The paper slightly yellowed, but still sealed. No tears, no water stains. Still in one piece. She set it on the small plastic table between them. Shaq looked down. On the front of the envelope, handwriting from someone 20 years old writing fast. He recognized it immediately. Nobody else on earth had ever written like that. Marlene. His own hand. Summer of 1992. I found this in your room, Marlene said. Her voice was flat and steady, like a lake before wind. September 1992. The landlord let me in to clean after you left. It was in the nightstand drawer. Shaq didn't pick it up right away. He just looked at it. I didn't open it until the day I found out I was pregnant. Some words hit you like a sound. Sharp and fast. Other words don't hit at all. They just sink. Slow. Into the chest. In a way nothing can stop. Marlene's words were the second kind. Shaq picked up the envelope. His hands, the that had held a basketball for 19 seasons, had shaken the president's hand, had signed thousands of contracts, were slightly unsteady as he opened it. The letter was folded in half inside. Plain paper, the kind you bought at a corner store in Newark. He unfolded it. His handwriting. 1992. He read. He read about the fear he had never spoken to anyone. That those 3 months in Newark were the only time he had felt real. Not performing Shaq the basketball player, not performing the big kid who made it, just Shaquille, a person trying to understand who he was. That he loved her the way a 20-year-old loves, completely, and with no idea what to do with it. That he hadn't sent this letter because he wasn't brave enough. And that was the thing he was most ashamed of about himself. He read to the last word and didn't fold it back up. Under the letter there was a smaller piece of paper. Plain white. Marlene's handwriting. Neat. Even. The hand of someone who studied accounting. Brianna Yvonne Coates. Born June 14th, 1993. She has your hands. 3 lines. Nothing else. Shaq read those 3 lines 4 times. The first time, with his eyes. The second time, with his mind. The third and fourth times, with something that didn't have a name. He looked down at his own hands. Size, 23. Measured with athletic tape. Written about in hundreds of articles. 15 years ago, a reporter had called them the hands of a giant. Then he looked up at Brianna. She hadn't moved. She was still looking at him. Her hands, long fingers, large knuckles, rested flat against her legs. Not hiding them, not showing them off. Just her hands. They had always been her hands. Since the day she was born. He set the small piece of paper on the table. He looked at Marlene. She didn't look away. She looked straight back at him. The look of someone who had been preparing for this conversation for a long time, had run through it in her head many times, had wondered what it would feel like, and was now finding out that no amount of preparation makes the real thing feel the way you expected. Why didn't you ever call me? He asked. Not an accusation, just a real question. Marlene didn't answer right away. She looked down at her own hands, fingers folded together in her lap, the way a person holds something in. I read that letter, she said. I read it over and over. And I understood. Understood what? Understood that you didn't leave because you didn't care. She paused. You left because you were scared. Scared you weren't good enough. Scared you'd break something that mattered to you. Shaq said nothing. Because she was right in a way that left no room for anything else. I didn't want to call you and say I was pregnant, Marlene continued. Because if I did that, you would have come back. Not because you chose to, but because you felt like you owed me something. I didn't want that. She looked straight at him. If you came back, I wanted it to be because you wanted to. 32 years. She had held that inside for 32 years. Shaq felt something in his chest that was not quite pain, but lived close to it. The feeling of realizing you had hurt someone without knowing it. And the worst part, the person you hurt didn't hold it against you. They had understood you better than you understood yourself. Brianna still hadn't moved. Still watching him. When did you find out? He asked. This time he was asking her, not Marlene. Brianna took one beat before answering. Mom told me when I was 9. 9 years old. He did the math. That was 2002. He was in Los Angeles, getting ready for his 3rd championship run with Kobe Bryant. That year he won the ring. That same year, a 9-year-old girl in Philadelphia heard her father's name for the first time. You never looked for me, he said. Not a question, but Brianna understood what he was asking. No, she said. Why not? She held his gaze for a moment before answering. That direct look, no avoidance, no apology in it, reminded him of Newark more than anything else at all night. Mom always said that people have to choose to come back, she said. Nobody has the right to pull them. Shaq looked at Marlene. Marlene looked at him. Neither of them said anything. For machines spinning. Yellow light overhead. Outside the glass, a bicycle went by. The clicking of the wheels was the only sound in the quiet street. For 32 years, Shaq had told himself she had moved on. That staying silent had been kind. That the damage was something that could be healed. Now he was sitting here, holding a letter he had written when he was 20, looking at the woman who had read that letter and understood him better than he had understood himself. Looking at a 24-year-old who had grown up with his hands, but without him. His silence had done damage. The damage had just been carried quietly and with dignity, the Newark way. No complaints, no announcements, just head down and keep going. I'm sorry, he said. Not a performance, not words to fill space. Just two plain words, as simple and bare as the letter in his hand. No decoration needed. Marlene gave one small nod. She received those words not like someone who had won something, but like someone finally getting help carrying something they had carried alone too long. Brianna didn't speak, but her shoulders, tight, since the moment Marlene called her name, tight since she stood up and stepped into this, softened just slightly. Just a little. But Shaq saw it. Lucille used to say, people from Newark don't forgive with words. They forgive by staying in the room. Brianna was still in the room. Marlene checked the clock on the laundromat wall. 9:41. I have to go, she said. Shift starts at 10. She stood up. The move of someone who had stood up from these plastic chairs hundreds of times before. No hurry, no heaviness. She just rose the way she did everything else in her life, steady, without needing anyone to watch. She put on her old denim jacket, pulled the canvas bag over her shoulder, stood straight. She looked at Shaq. Under the fluorescent lights of the Washmore, Marlene Coates at 45 didn't look worn down. She looked like a person who had lived enough to know what mattered and what didn't. Round glasses, green wool sweater, eyes that didn't need anyone to tell her she was right. I don't know what tonight means for you, she said. Calm voice, no drama in it. But I didn't keep that envelope to blame you. I kept it to give it back. She paused. Now you have it. She looked at Brianna then. The look a mother gives her daughter in a moment too large for ordinary looks, releasing her and holding her at the same time. I'll see you, baby, she said. Brianna nodded, didn't say anything. But there was something warm behind her eyes, small, and kept close, the warmth of a daughter who knew her mother had just done something brave. The little bell above the laundromat door rang when Marlene stepped out. Small sound, then quiet. Just Shaq and Brianna left in the Washmore. For machines running, yellow light, detergent and warm steam in the air. Outside the glass, Kensington Avenue kept going through its Friday night. Cars passing, music from somewhere, laughter in the distance. Brianna didn't sit down right away. She stood and looked at him. Same direct gaze. No permission asked. No turning away. Shaq held the envelope. The letter he wrote when he was 20 years old. All those fears he never sent. Now open on the plastic table of a laundromat on Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia on a Friday night in October 2026. He didn't hide the tears. Not because he couldn't. He had learned how to hide feelings a long time ago. Back in Newark. Back when Philip Harrison taught him that a man responds, he doesn't just react. But tonight in this laundromat was not the time to perform anything. Brianna watched him. No comment. She didn't look away. Then she pulled a plastic chair out from the row. She sat down across from him. Her choice. No one invited her. No one asked. She decided to sit down and stay. What are you doing in Philadelphia? She asked. A normal voice. A normal question. The voice of someone starting a conversation, not ending one. Car broke down, he said. She gave one slow nod, like she was considering that answer and deciding it was good enough. Like 32 years of absence, and a broken-down SUV on Kensington Avenue was exactly how something this overdue was supposed to finally arrive. I work at Temple University Hospital, she said. Emergency room nurse. Day shift. I'm off this Saturday. He looked at her. Emergency room nurse. He thought of Lucille. White uniform. Hands that always smelled like antiseptic soap. Women from Newark don't pick nursing because it's all they can do. They pick it because it's how they understand the world, by standing next to the people who need someone. ER is rough? He asked. It's rough, she said plainly. But I'm used to it. A silence. Not an uncomfortable one. The silence of two people sitting together for the first time, not yet knowing where to start, but knowing they will. There's a place in South Philly, Brianna said. Kowalski's. They make a pork roll sandwich. Pork roll, egg, American cheese, the Jersey way. She paused one beat. Mom always said it was the closest thing to Newark she ever found in Philadelphia. He didn't answer right away. Pork roll, egg, and cheese on a Kaiser roll. He knew that smell the way he knew the sound of sneakers on hardwood. Newark mornings. Lucille at the stove. Philip at the table with the newspaper. Radio from the back room. I've never been to Newark, Brianna said. No sadness in it. No blame. Just a truth she set on the table the same way Marlene had set the envelope. Straight. No conditions attached. But I think I'd like to know what it looks like. Shaq looked down at the envelope in his hands. The letter he wrote at 20. All the fears he wasn't brave enough to send. Now open in his lap. Held by someone he had never known. Someone who had lived their whole life, with his hands, but without him beside them. People talk about missed chances like they disappear. Like a door closes, and that's it. He had believed that. He had been wrong. Saturday, he said. Brianna looked at him. One nod. Certain. No rush. No need for anything more. Saturday, she said back. For machines still running. Fluorescent light, still yellow. Outside the Washmore's glass door, Kensington Avenue had no idea what had just happened inside. No idea about a 32-year-old envelope. No idea about a letter that was never sent. No idea about a man who had just been handed back something he hadn't known he'd set down. His phone buzzed in his pocket. His driver texted, "Tow truck just pulled up." He looked down at the phone. Then up at Brianna. She was still there, still looking at him. Her mother's eyes. Newark eyes. The eyes of a person who doesn't need anyone's permission, but will stay if you turn out to be worth it. He folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope, held the envelope in both hands, size 23 hands, now holding the most important thing he had all night, not with force, but with care. Kowalski's, he said. South Philly, she said. I'll text you the address. He nodded. He stood up, bending slightly, so he didn't hit the light overhead. Some things don't change no matter what else does. He looked at her one more time before stepping out. Brianna Yvonne Coates. Born June 14, 1993. Emergency room nurse, Temple University Hospital. Never been to Newark. Wants to know what it looks like. Saturday, he said again, not repeating it, but making it a promise. She nodded one more time. Still certain. Still no rush. Saturday. Shaq ducked through the door of the Washmore. October air, cold, damp, smelling like wet asphalt from the afternoon rain. Same as when he walked in. The world outside had no idea. The tow truck was there, yellow lights flashing, the driver hooking the dead SUV up to the cable. He stopped on the sidewalk, looked down at the envelope. 32 years. A letter that was never sent. A woman who had read it and understood what he couldn't bring himself to say. A daughter who grew up with his hands, but with Newark in her heart, straight posture, eyes that didn't ask permission, who knew exactly who was worth staying for. Lucille used to tell him that the things that matter most in life don't come when you're ready. They come when you need them. At the right time, the right place, in a way you never could have predicted. A broken SUV on Kensington Avenue. The Washmore laundromat, 20 steps away, still had its lights on. A woman reading a book who didn't look up when the door opened. And a girl in the right corner, with headphones around her neck, whose fingers had stopped scrolling the moment the big man walked in, because she had recognized him right away, and had already decided what she would do if he turned out to deserve it. Shaq put the envelope carefully into the front pocket of his navy hoodie. He stepped off the curb onto Kensington Avenue, and for the first time in 32 years, he walked away without the feeling of something left behind. Some things people never say out loud because they're afraid. Not afraid of being turned down. Afraid that saying it will change something. That words will break what silence had kept whole. Shaquille O'Neal was afraid of that when he was 20 years old. He wrote the letter. Then he didn't send it. He put it in a drawer and walked away, telling himself it was the kindest thing he could do. 32 years later, he stood on the sidewalk on Kensington Avenue and understood something different. The kindest thing isn't always silence. Sometimes the kindest thing is honesty, even when it comes later than you wanted, even when it arrives on a cold Friday night, with a broken car and the yellow light of a laundromat. Marlene Coates had read that letter and never called him for 32 years. Not because she didn't want to, because she understood that real love doesn't hold people against their will. She raised her daughter alone. She worked the night shift for 11 years. She built her life with her own hands. And she did it, without complaint, without asking anyone to notice, the Newark way. Brianna Coates grew up knowing her father's name and never went looking for him because her mother had taught her that people have to choose to come back. Nobody gets to pull them. And that Friday night, in the Washmore laundromat on Kensington Avenue, a broken-down car brought a man to exactly the place he should have been 32 years earlier. Not a coincidence, not a miracle, just life, being kind in a way you don't recognize until you're already inside a laundromat, holding a letter you wrote when you were 20, watching a girl pull out a chair and sit down across from you because she chose to. Not because anyone asked. That Saturday, at Kowalski's in South Philly, a 7'1" man sat in a small sandwich shop that smelled like pork roll and fried eggs. He sat across from a 24-year-old who told him what Newark looked like in her imagination, through her mother's stories, through the food her mother cooked, through the way her mother stood straight and never lowered her head for anyone. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't correct her. Then he told her what Newark actually looked like. And that was the first time in 32 years he talked about Newark not as the place he came from, but as the place he belonged to. And the person listening belonged there too, even though she had never once set foot on those streets. Some roots aren't planted in the ground. They're planted in people. And no matter how many years pass, no matter how many miles get between you, they stay there, waiting to be found. Because that's how Newark works. Shaq drove back to his hotel that night and didn't turn the TV on, didn't call anyone. He just sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, holding the envelope, running his thumb along the soft, worn edge of the paper. He thought about Lucille. She had told him once, when he was small, and asked her why people from Newark went quiet instead of saying what they felt. Because Newark teaches you that words cost energy. And energy is for living. So you only speak when you really have to. It had taken him 32 years to learn that silence costs energy too. And that's sometimes being honest, even when it's late, even when it's hard, even when you have to walk into a laundromat under yellow fluorescent lights and look straight at the person you left behind, is the only way you ever find your way back. He set the envelope on the nightstand. He picked up his phone, and he texted Brianna his hotel address with one line. If you want to hear about Newark before Saturday, I can tell you. 30 seconds later, his phone buzzed. One short text back. Tell me. And that night, for the first time in 32 years, Shaquille O'Neal sat in the dark of a Philadelphia hotel room and talked about Newark. Not for reporters, not for fans, not for cameras, but for the only person in the world who carried Newark in their blood and had never once been allowed to see it.